Good morning. Today is Tuesday, August 6th, 2024 to 7:30 a.m. in the council chambers, City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. And this is a regular monthly meeting of the Sandpoint Urban Renewal Agency Board of Commissioners. Roll call. For the record, I'm Chairman Eric Paul presiding. Also present are Commissioners Kendon Perry, Marilyn Sabella via Zoom, Ned Brandenberger, and Jason Welker. Commissioner Tom Bacoy is absent. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the July 9th, 2024 meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Motion. Commissioner Perry was the motion and Commissioner Welker was the second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Is there any public in attendance?
One of our council members is
I don't have to read it.
attending.
I don't have to report. Okay. For the next item on the agenda, we'll have general reports and announcements. I will begin the monthly financial report, which was provided in the meeting packet. All balances are as of July 31st, 2024. Downtown general account, 1,687,805. Revenue allocation, 95,170 and 60 cents. The Northern has 4,713,952 97 cents. Downtown loan balance, 824,678 38 cents. Next payment due is September 15, 2024. We did receive increment in July. Downtown received 32,538 98 cents, and the Northern received $3,430.36. The Arts Fund downtown increased as a result of those increments to 181,892 and 9 cents, and the Northern 100,675 and 78 cents. Silver Box project remains the same as previous, with the remaining balance of 1,684.68. Advanced 18,315.22 to date. Any questions or comments regarding this report? Are there any other general announcements from the board? All good? All right. Next, I'll yield the floor to Construction Manager Eric Bush for any updates. Eric, you're on.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Give me 1 second to grab my screen share. I just wanted to give you all a quick update on the downtown parking lot. This is an iteration of the layout that I received from our engineer, Van Houten Consulting Design on Friday. So I haven't had much of a chance to review it yet, but it does show our kind of future parking lot layout. It's more or less the same layout as we have currently with respect to parking spaces. We have determined on the east side of the parking lot, it's the top of this photo here, or this drawing here. Our spaces, our width is a little bit narrow to accommodate kind of standardized parking spaces in there. I met with the engineer on site last week for like 3 hours. We were walking around and kind of evaluating how people use the parking lot. And even though it's a little bit narrow there, we can still make it work with what we have. The alternative would be losing a significant number of spaces, and I don't think we want to do that. But it is a little tight, but it's certainly workable. We can make that accommodate the way it currently is. But I just kind of had this up here. It's more or less the existing layout. On the
How many spaces, Eric?
I don't have that off the top of my head, Eric. I apologize.
No worries.
I believe it was about 160. And our return would be a few less than that, about 157 or 155, something to that effect. As we get over kind of further west, the northwest corner here is where We will be installing kind of the pedestal mounts for a future kiosk that,
We're seeing it there.
oh, I'm sorry. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That location there, I apologize.
Is that the southeast corner?
That's the northwest corner.
Okay.
Kind of catty corner from the hardware store. That's where the old kiosk used to be, the two post kiosk. That's where the new kiosk will be, and I think Heather has some additional information on that. But my team's working with Heather and what she's got her crews working on to, kind of accommodate the foundation material, making sure everything's kind of set up for when the kiosk is finished and when, the art has been kind of determined and finalized, that it can just be installed right away. Our intention is to just set all that up as a part of this construction, so it's really easy for kind of the next step.
Eric, are you sure? Isn't that Church Street on the left there and over on the right? So that would be.
That's right by the fountain.
You were correct, I
across
apologize.
from the outlet.
I was telling you the opposite corners. We are up here on the top right.
Okay.
My apologies.
So is that the kiosk area?
Yes,
And
this is the kiosk. You can see here, let me zoom in.
That's
a
by
little
the
bit.
fountain.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. You can see Third Avenue up top of the page. And then Oak Street over here on the right-hand side of the page. My apologies. In this location, we need either 4 or 5 ADA spaces, 3 of which would be van spaces. So we're accommodating that in the layout of the parking lot as well. That's a standard ratio that the Americans with Disabilities Act determines based on how many parking spaces you have. So we're making sure we're in compliance with those. And additionally, what you can kind of see, if you can see my cursor kind of circling in these locations, those are parking bumper blocks. We don't currently have any. If you are parked along Third Avenue, or walk along Third Avenue, you notice that a lot of times the front bumpers of vehicles are kind of obstructing the sidewalk. Installing bumper blocks along this will make that problem no longer a problem. We'll also be installing bumper blocks everywhere else in the parking lot, as you can see. That'll stop people from driving up in the center areas, the 2 landscape islands. And on either side, kind of the fence location or the sidewalk location. So that's a kind of minor deal, installing parking bumper blocks, but it will make the parking lot function a whole lot better. So with that said, this is probably a 30 or 40% complete design iteration. There's plenty of time for revisions if anybody has any comments or anything they'd like to consider differently. But generally, we're working through the layout and making sure we're maximizing the number of spaces we can get out of here. And we're also looking at this project with a pretty keen eye for stormwater management. We're currently shedding stormwater across public sidewalks on the southern end of the parking lot to get into the street, which then has catch basins. That's really problematic from a pedestrian perspective. In the winter, for example, we don't want water flowing across sidewalks, which then turns to ice, makes a pretty treacherous situation. So as a part of this project, we'll be setting up the future parking lot where it does not shed water across sidewalks or the driveways to entrances or exits coming in or out of the park.
And Eric didn't mention, but I'll just also add and be working with him. Obviously paid parking is something I'd like to pursue here. The timing of that obviously is challenging with us trying to get this done this fall because it's going to be a very thoughtful paid parking program. But the intent is to preemptively plumb the parking lot for a variety of paid parking options, including either a automated arm or the stand where you self-report, check yourself in. So 2 other elements, and then if there's remaining money, once we get the estimate back, obviously the exterior perimeter is something we talked about. I've mentioned a split rail fence of sorts, but something just to make it a distinct sort of sense of arrival feeling at this parking lot. So more work to be done, but long and we're under the gun because come October something, pavement will not be an option. So because of the weather conditions, so we'll try to get this thing ripped up and graded and repaved, lickety split.
Our engineer's moving at a pretty lightning pace here, given the, time constraints of wanting to have time to get this project bid and then, under construction and completed yet this fall. So he's working extremely quickly. And I hope that within the next few weeks to a month, we'll be, in the process of going out to bid.
Eric, what's the purpose of the bulb at the end of each lane?
Kind of in this area here and down here. It provides clearance for if you are, if you can kind of follow my cursor here, if you're in a vehicle and you're traveling this direction and you can't find a place to park and you need to loop back around in here and so forth. It allows proper clearance so you don't turn too tight into, an adjacent vehicle that's parked there. It basically forces the vehicle to follow a radius as opposed to, cutting too tight if there's additional vehicles or something like that and, perhaps hitting one.
So you're on a really tight schedule here, just listening to everything, because you said this is a 30-40% design right now. And that you hope to get it out for bid in a month. So now that's September. And then the bid process, I don't know how long that takes, and then get approval to bid and then to start. What's the plan if you can't meet the timeframes?
If we can't meet the timeframes and realistically, that will be how our fall weather cooperates this year. Some years, the asphalt plants don't close down until early to mid-December, because some years we have a warm fall. Some years it snows in October and it stays cold and then the plants close and they're done. If weather doesn't cooperate, there's not really, a whole lot in our control with that respect, but the idea would be that once we have a contractor on board, we will be paying attention to that. So for example, if it is start looking like it's getting colder, there's a storm coming in, we wouldn't initiate the demolition of the parking lot, because of the risk of not having a paved parking lot. I certainly hope we don't get to that, situation, but it's absolutely something to be aware of and be paying attention to because it is really.
Does our budget for this project include landscaping of those landscaped areas?
Yes, it does. So not, I would say robust landscaping, like what we would, as nice as we would prefer to make it. But we are going to be installing some plant materials on the eastern island here. If you can see where my cursor's floating, this is the bank over on this side down here. We've got some pretty nice mature trees in there. A couple of them are unhealthy and need to be removed, but we'll maintain the other ones because they're big and mature. In this island on the western portion here, those trees are not worth keeping. They're not in very good shape. So there's two different options with this island. Option one is kind of inverting it and making it a bit of a ditch for stormwater management so we can push some stormwater in there and then get it into a catch basin on either side of the parking lot. Or it may kind of remain as it is, more or less at grade or slightly above grade, and we will plant some landscape materials in that island. We'll be seeding everything that we disturb, both islands and kind of the edges where there's landscape materials, with likely a clover fescue. The low maintenance landscape that we're kind of trying in a few locations throughout town. The idea being that it takes a lot of pressure off our parks crew that maintains those public right of ways. It's a installation that would be mowed, maybe just 2 or 3 times a year as opposed to every week or every 10 days, something like that.
What's your project timeline from demo to completion?
I would guess that if you get the right construction crew in here, this project could be fully complete in 3 weeks. That's a pretty tight timeline. And it really depends on, the size of the contractor that gets the bid. If you have a large contractor with a lot of equipment and a lot of crews, they can put a lot of manpower on it and they can make it happen very, very quickly. If it's a smaller crew, they can still get it done. This is a product of in the construction world, we call it means and methods. That's how you complete a project. We don't dictate that. As far as how you remove the asphalt, we tell you to remove the asphalt. There's various mechanical ways that's done. Some are more efficient than others. All of them get the job done, but for example, there's paving milling machines. You see them working on the highway. They basically strip asphalt and they do it in very quickly. Those machines are amazing. They're also extremely expensive and not every contractor has one. And most contractors rent them, but they're not always available. So if those machines are not available, they'll have to remove the asphalt with an excavator or similar, and that works. It gets the job done. It'd probably take them 3 or 4 days to remove that with an excavator. With the milling machine, they'd get it done in 6 hours. So the point is, there's a lot of different, ways that this project can get complete. And the hope is that by putting a tight time frame for construction in here, the contractors will identify that and know that, once they're awarded a contract, they have to be in full gear, ready to go.
The issue is not gonna be just the weather, it's gonna be getting on schedule.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, in my experience, we can really benefit from kind of a late bid like this. A lot of contractors fill their schedule through, late September, early October, and then they know winter's coming, so, they don't have a lot of work, after that. In my experience in the past bidding projects in this time frame, you can get some contractors that need a month of work, to kind of fill a little bit of that schedule. And you can get some really good prices in that scenario, and you can get some contractors that are really hungry to get some work done. So it can work out in a really great way.
So, I think it's been discussed before and I might have missed it, but there's no charging stations and that's not a consideration for the future.
We could certainly look to install charging stations. We don't have the power here and the high level of power, that's needed to support charging stations, but we could certainly look to put some pedestals in and perhaps some conduit. And if we do get that power, then it's really easy to, just go ahead and install the rest of the equipment needed for those stations.
Something to consider.
I can certainly look into that. Basically, what we have to figure out where the closest transformer is that can provide that power, or if Avista would need to upgrade a transformer to be able to get us that requirement there. And then from there, we would figure out the best location in the parking lot to install it. That's typically a product of proximity. Power is pretty expensive to install, so you want to put it, in the closest corner you can, for example, to where that may be. But I'll certainly have our engineer look into what's possible.
Well, you got charging stations at Jeff Jones. Isn't that your closest power then?
It might be.
Theoretically.
And it might be that because there's existing charging stations there, a transformer would need to be upgraded, or, that location just doesn't have capacity for additional load. But I'm certainly no electrical engineering expert, so
I think,
I'll rely on the experts for that.
I think it'd be proactive to do that.
Some conduit, yeah.
Yeah. At least
And,
get a pump for it.
we are putting out a RFQ for replacement of those charging stations at Jeff Jones and at the City Beach. That should be going out, I guess, in the next week.
Topic, are those paid for or are those free?
They will be paid for. You
Currently, they're not.
Eric, one more question.
These
these medians in the middle are gonna be concrete curbs around those, unlike the current parking lot where they're just dirt.
No, there's not, and that's, curbs are really expensive to install. It would be my preference to install them around there. But we serve a, excuse me, we serve a similar function by installing the bumper blocks there. And that the bumper blocks stop people from driving up into,
Talking like around these turns, because.
I apologize.
Currently, I mean, this is the pretty much exact shape of the current parking lot, except these are all just dirt and cars just drive right across it.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering,
so-
are we gonna protect that now that we're redoing it?
now that I'm following you, I'll have, our engineer look into, preparing a cost for installing curb around those kind of 4 dog bones on the edges. We probably can fit that in cost wise as a part of the project. But I'll have them explore that. That would be a great thing to install curb around those. That would minimize the damage that occurs there.
You just get different damage in the winter.
Yeah, and they'll get hit by plows in the winter.
Yeah.
But it, we can't solve it all, but.
Any other questions of Eric on the city parking lot?
I think what I'm surprised me is how this is exactly. Even the little kiosk, that's currently a brick triangle. Wonder if there's gonna be any update to what's currently there, or
There's not a lot of money.
I understand, so it's really just a
Surfacing.
new layer of asphalt. There's
Yeah.
no additional curbs or landscaping is gonna be minimal.
Drainage, that's.
Gotta improve drainage and prepare for potential paid parking and, yeah, some landscaping and.
Yes,
Or-
yeah. The aspects I think that will bring in that new feeling would be with the Arts, Culture and Historic Preservation Commission. For placemaking and vibrancy, and we're looking forward to sharing the details of that in the next meeting.
And Jason and everyone else, I realize that it's like Jason said, more or less what's existing. I would love to be able to install the nicest parking lot ever, in this location, but obviously we're budget limited with what we can do, so we're doing the best we can to improve it, and just by nature of having, good asphalt in this location and fresh line stripes and bumper blocks, the parking lot will be far better than it currently is. And over time, if we have additional funding, we can make additional landscape improvements, for example, that will continue to enhance, the feel of this location.
Perfect. Any other comments, thoughts? Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
All right. Old business, first under old business, I'll yield the floor to Arts and Historic Preservation Officer Heather Upton for a presentation on the request from the Arts, Culture and Historic Preservation Commission for a 5-year plan for allocation of funds in the downtown district. Heather, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, everyone. This came about when I was working with the Art, Culture and Historic Preservation Commission on understanding what we want in the parking lot, according to the directive from all of you. And just from a planning aspect, it's important to know how you're going to spend your funds long term to be able to approach each project. Historically, when the Silver Box program was established, there was like a bucket essentially that those funds went into, and it was, I think, more of a line item for finance to further understand distribution of funds. So we sat down as a commission and talked about what we see for the downtown public art funds, estimating off of like 180,000, let's say. And these programs are very, very important to our community in the realm of arts and culture. And the commission felt that it was most important to be able to have a 5-year plan of a fiduciary security to be able to continue these programs to help with the vibrancy of the community. And so here you see with the historic walking tour, this is 2 printing cycles of the walking tour brochure. This includes the designated funds that I had proposed earlier to you, which we're working on right now. I've submitted a grant to help support the matching funds of that. So that's a rough estimate of 17,200. So that would be, we're projecting, we do get the grant, that it will offset the cost to 7,200 for this printing cycle. And then if we were to do a printing cycle 5 years from now, it would be approximately $10,000. And that's our historic walking tour that we do. Let me know if you have any questions about these specific programs as well. Graffiti Alley is a great program. It's right downtown. It's an actual education program for arts. It's our only urban art program that we have. We work with the charter school, POAC, so we're a partner in that. And they have requested $1,000 each year to help support the alley. And then we have our Silver Box program, which is our art on loan program.
You want to ask questions at the end or as we go through?
During Sunspur.
So, on the graffiti alley, so the $1,000, what's it for?
So, and I would be happy to come back and present budgets, but that one specifically is for supplies for the students and for the classroom. So it would be like the paint and all of those things.
And the reason I ask is, in the past, we have done some soft cost projects,
Mhm.
but I think we'd probably just like to lean more to hardscape art stuff.
Okay,
So, and if we're paying for study, because in the past, when we were younger, we paid
Yes.
for a lot of studies. Right? And
Yes.
some of the stuff never came to fruition. So state, the brochures, I guess is, it's in the budget, but
Mhm.
think of hardscape art
I really appreciate that.
and the paint as, like, in a sense, hardscape to a certain degree.
So you would believe that would fit under hardscape? Because the end product,
Yeah,
perfect.
as long as it's going on the alley. If it's going in the art room, no,
Yeah, that makes complete
it
sense.
can't be spent at the charter school. It's
Perfect,
got to be on site.
perfect. I love that. It's one of those things when I look up historically projects and budgets, they're all a little bit different according to,
Right.
the time. So I really appreciate the clarification on that. Silver boxes. So that's our art on loan program. We have 3, and that features our 3D artistic sculptures. So there's a artist stipend incorporated with that, and then there's installation costs. So each cycle, and there's also a call charge involved, is $3,300 to make that program run. So that would be for 5 years, the 16,500 to continue with that program. And it's a way to really help artists get their name out and their works out as well. And then I can't wait to share with you all what we've come up with the downtown parking lot. I was waiting to get details from Eric to confirm all those aspects before we shared. Sorry, I don't have those today. But we're talking about $40,000. And we've had some really fantastic ideas that will help support a new look for the parking lot and then some functional items as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at for a 5-year plan. And then all the remainder of the funds, we're really excited to help support future projects such as the connectivity with like the roundabout on Superior and any other art projects that make sense to all of you in the city again.
So does your timing on the art for the parking lot have to match Eric's construction cycle? Because if you're behind him, you can't hold him up, and if he's.
We certainly wouldn't do anything to hold up the project.
No,
If you have to put in foundations or
Well,
plumbing or
The-
wiring, if
the-
you will.
Yeah, the idea is that Heather and I have been working as she's been working with her art crew, and my engineer's been working on the design. And our intention is for the kiosk, it's pretty simple. We're just gonna install kind of a foundation and a bracket or pedestal type system. Where when they determine the final product of the kiosk, it's kind of plug and play. They can just bring it in, plop it in place, bolt it down, and they're good to go. For the art installations, it kind of depends obviously on what the installation is finally. But our intention is to do the same thing there. So if it needs, two foundations with some bolts that can, that are cast into the concrete, or we can come in, place it and bolt it down, we're good to go. If it's something a little different, we're also gonna accommodate that, but the idea is that, my portion of the project, the actual parking lot redevelopment, will probably be complete before, Heather and her team is ready to install, so we'll just have it ready to go. So they can just plop it in place and we'll be done.
Yeah, so I'm right now working on measurements and making sure that I have all the information to be able to apply the construction foundation into the project. I'm working with, we're thinking about working with the Kalispel tribe that has specific metalworks, and they're very responsive. They're fantastic to work with. And so I'm moving about the way that we're doing calls in more of an effective way. So potentially we could have a call for design put out, and then I could immediately have a tradesman within the metal fabrication world build it instead of the artist building it. And sometimes that can fast track a project too. So we're definitely being creative, but if all else fails, the art can always be layered in. But I certainly believe that we could meet the timeline of installation in the parking lot as well. Do a big grand opening, ribbon cutting.
Perfect. Thank you.
On the brochure, the printing costs, is there a QR code? There is a QR code, right? Just
And
looking 5 years out, would you be better served with
yeah,
directional display to a QR code versus printing?
we've vacillated back and forth, and it's kind of split at this point, but you never know in 5 years. There's people that really like that ephemera material and, put it on their bookshelf because it's a very beautiful booklet. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy with me. But we made that, we'll constantly each year look at that and see if that will be the indirection. My understanding of these reserve buckets is that it helps us and you guys understand kind of where we're headed and what projects are being funded. But at any time, we can come back to the table and decide to reallocate that funds. Is that kind of how it's worked in the past?
It's kind of up to you guys.
It's just like a line item. Yeah.
Mhm.
Perfect. Are you guys okay with establishing these line items for these?
Well, we won't put a line item in our
engineering
budget for it.
projects?
We have,
Not a specific one.
not specific, it's this, there's money available. It's just be cognizant if it's all gone to soft costs and studies and brochures, it's like, that's not really the intent of the 2.5% that's allocated. The intent is hardscape
Perfect. That sounds fantastic.
or street cover, color the streets or whatever, stuff like that. That's
Like
what it's,
asphalt, like
yeah, it's not,
visual end product.
yeah, it's not soft stuff.
Great, thank you all so
Yep.
much for having that discussion, and we'll move forward understanding that we'll be continuing these programs, and I look forward to presenting details on the parking lot in our next meeting.
I will give you a little clarification though, even though there's not a line item here. If you like, when we did the silver boxes, then I know there's money allocated for it, so I track it.
So that's,
So
yeah,
it will be tracked. If you
perfect.
say it's $1,000 and you end up spending $1,500, it's like you said 1,000.
Yeah.
So,
This is official.
yes, it's,
Perfect.
well, behind the scenes, it's kind of
That sounds
a
great.
bean
Thank you.
counter, right? Okay, thank you, Heather.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Perfect, thank you again.
Mr. Chairman, just a brief, finished. We're still awaiting the response on the Chrissy grant, Great Northern. That's gonna be in September, so we are eagerly anticipating the determination on that grant application. That's a big one. People in the public watching, concerned about what will happen at Great Northern, so. You'll know as soon as we hear.
Okay.
You'll probably hear me shout with extreme joy. from wherever you are in town, when that comes through.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. Thank you for the updates. Final item under old business, following the budget discussion during our last meeting, the board will now consider adoption of the Surrey fiscal year 2025 budget. Pursuant to Idaho Code Section 50-2065D, Surrey has the same fiscal year as the city and has to prepare, approve, and adopt an annual budget for filing with the city for informational purposes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the budget, and are there any questions? Commissioner Bacoy and myself did the budget. So in the past, we had done down everything at 3.5%, and since the downtown seems to be increasing quicker, we did a 5%. It's probably still somewhat conservative. Like what Jeremy was talking about to start with the Seasons Building 8 coming on, estimated value of 25 million there. There's some other properties. We talked about the Columbia State Bank building or a building being potentially undervalued. So there are some lifts in our footprint that might happen, especially in the Seasons area. And the Northern's still just kind of plugging along. I think maybe those units off of Woodland, once they're up and running, will add some more value. There's some hangars that have been built, so I think that will come on. I'm not sure how they value those on up of Woodland there as well. Interest income's based on current balances that we have now and what we've received with our income from the LGIP. We've kept our operating expenditures the same. We've always been under budget recently on that, so that's money available for other uses if it's not spent. And then you can see our capital expenditures.
What's the Schweitzer Ranch project?
So the Schweitzer Ranch is all that Milltown area. No, Schweitzer Ranch is the one out off of Woodland, off of Woodland. So you know that new housing that's going in now is behind it. So we put in sewer, and that was a reimbursement. So Schweitzer Ranch, Milltown, and Milltown Public Improvements, the developer needed a urban renewal commitment to reimburse for their funding, initial funding. And we said we'd reimburse a certain dollar amount per year if they provided us evidence of what the tax values were and that they paid their taxes. Well, they've never asked for increments since the project. But we have to line item commit it, and we won't go back. So if they came in and asked today, it would be only what we've committed this year. They cannot go backwards.
That's been carried forward for 5, 6+ years.
10
And
plus years.
very kind.
Yes.
Not to,
Yeah.
ask for
That's the Prescott's.
effectively giving Zura $25,000.
25,000, 33,000, and 18,000 a year. Yeah. Yeah, we'll send it. Well, we'll do that at 2029.
Send them,
What?
send them a thank you note.
At 2029.
Mine now.
Yeah, don't remind them.
Mr. Chairman, just on this
Yeah.
item, we have, I think it's an unmemorialized agreement on the loan from the downtown.
Yep.
Just housekeeping, it'd probably be wise just to formalize that this next year.
Yes.
So a note to myself, I'll have
Yes.
legal just prepare something just so it's more official.
Right. So we still have that. I agree with that. So we're making one more payment this year, 475,000 to the city. And then next year, the balance is 572. So we'll just pay it owed to the city.
Awesome.
Okay.
And then I guess the other thing is, as we look into the future here, we'll be selecting a designer engineer for phase 3 of downtown coming up this fall. And I would imagine that will be kicking off, in the winter.
Mhm.
So that's the other big project. Jason and I were in Boise last Thursday and visiting with Dennis Porter at Commerce to go over block grant opportunities looks like there'd be about $500,000 available for either the Upper Bridge Street area near the Slum and Blight of the burned out building, or elsewhere throughout that phase of the project. So we should be able to get a nice match from the state on that. And then how far down we go, your border ends for the revenue allocation area right at Superior. So depending on what happens internally, and I'll be presenting a request for a 1% local option tax tomorrow night to the council to authorize it to go on the ballot this fall. If that were to pass, we would have additional revenue to continue that project all the way around Superior out to the entrance of the city by Condo de Sol.
So the 1% will be specific for,
It's gonna be for all, well, the way I have proposed all streets for 25 years, streets and sidewalks, in the city of Sandpoint. So to try to once and for all, take care of the issue of streets and sidewalks and
Good.
come up with an equitable way for sidewalks to be paid for in the city. So
and that corner on Superior where the McFarland house is,
Yep.
that is in the footprint. That property is in our footprint.
yeah, the property is,
Yeah.
we may be visiting, there is a active developer looking at that property. We may be visiting with you in the near future about potential support for a couple of projects down there.
Perfect. All good things.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on the budget? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025 Sandpoint Urban Renewal Agency budget. Motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we did have a member of the public join. Wanted to give them the opportunity to speak if they'd like.
Would anyone from the public care to comment?
No hand raised.
Thank you. Motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025 for renewal budget. So moved. Commissioner Perry?
Second.
Commissioner Sabella? Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. The budget is approved and will be filed with the city. So what do I do to file with the city? You have it.
We'll take care of that.
You will take care of. Okay, great. Thanks. New business. For the final item on the morning's agenda, the board will consider an invoice for reimbursement to the city for expenses related to the Great Northern Road project. Commissioners, any questions regarding the invoice? Any updates that you'd want to provide, Eric, on it? Pretty
This
straightforward.
invoice primarily composes design work from JUB engineers. This was kind of final design getting us to the 60% completion milestone. We reached that in May, and that was that information was part of what was submitted in our 50 grant application, selected pages of our design. And there's some additional cost in there from Epic Land Solutions. That's our right-of-way consultant for appraisal review, and kind of final offer package for the Kodiak acquisition on the east side of Great Northern. That's the kind of both pieces of this invoice.
Okay. I will entertain a motion. Would anyone from the public care to comment?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion for Sura to pay City of Sandpoint invoice number 1762 in the amount of $108,182.48 as a quarterly reimbursement for the Great Northern Road realignment and reconstruction project. Motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Brandenberger. Motion. Commissioner Walker, second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes and this invoice will be paid as approved. No further business on the agenda. Will be adjourned at 8:15 a.m. Thanks, everyone.